Hello, and welcome back for another episode of Line Check. So today we're mixing it up a little bit. Instead of interviewing a drummer, I actually have a vocalist on the show here, which I'm super excited about. This will be the first guy that isn't a drummer. I did start this series with the intention of doing not just drummers, get some producers, get some singers, get some guitarists in. So I'm stoked to have Jake Adkins on this episode. He's the lead singer and one of the songwriters behind the newly formed band called Wake Up Hate. They're kind of metalcore. They're kind of alternative rock or active rock. They have a lot of really great influences. All their stuff's been mastered by Andrew Wade, who's, the guy behind Wage War and tons and tons of other bands. I've actually shouted out this band on my channel, and I was super stoked when Jake Adkins agreed to do this today just because I'm a really big fan of their music. I think it's awesome for anyone who's a fan of metalcore, who's a fan of bands like Bring Me the Horizon or Architects or Down and Dirty or Ask Alexandria. It's kind of a fusion of all those sounds with maybe a little bit of like sort of rock influences like older bands like 3 Days Grace. So you're going to hear about all that in this episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. So ladies and gentlemen, Jake Adkins from Wake Up Hate. All right, Jake. So first of all, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me today. I've been really excited, looking forward to this interview.
Thanks, man, for having me. I've never actually done anything like this before, so I'm excited to be on here and excited to talk with you.
Hell yeah, man. So let's talk about the new project. Let's talk about Wake Up Hate. That project has been something that I've featured here on the channel that a lot of my older subscribers, not even older subscribers, like relatively most of my subscribers have seen that video and know about you guys. So how did the project come to be?
So it's kind of a long story. It started with me and Matt Browning, who used to play guitar in a band called Exotype. And I had met him through a forum called Chango on Facebook. And we had actually met because we both had been doing ghostwriting for different bands. And he had posted a song at one point, and I think I left a comment on it and was like, dude, this is really tight or something like that. And so he messaged me. He wanted to hear some of my work, and we started just sending stuff back and forth. And the way that we would work on it is he would do a lot of the drums, the guitar, and the bass, kind of like the structure of the songs, and then I would take them on and do like the post-production, and I would mix the songs. And so we started kind of like writing songs together and like ghostwriting together. And that's actually what South House Studios is. It's just a studio that we started together because we were working together a lot. And that eventually turned into what Wake Up Hate is now, just because we started wanting to write our own music. We wanted to start showing people like what we're capable of, the two of us. And we ended up writing one of the songs, which hasn't been released yet, about, I think, July last year. So July 2018. And or was it 2017? It may have been 2017. And we wrote it. We didn't like have the idea for Wake Up Hate yet. We didn't have the idea to necessarily start a band. We just wanted a song with like vocals on it, and we wanted to like hear what like a finished product by us sounded like. We wrote that. I remember Matt messaged me one day, and he said that he wanted to go to a producer with the song that we had written. And right at that time, I had just written another song, which is Over the Edge. That's our second single. And I showed it to Matt, and we just started getting really excited about it. That initial excitement from that first song came back, and that's when we decided to like take it really seriously. That's when we decided we needed a band name. We need to figure out like what we want to do as far as like release an EP, or how many members do we want to include, or just basically everything.
Okay, so where are you located, and where's Matt located?
I am specifically in Ocoee, Florida, and he is actually closer to downtown Orlando, I believe.
So that's like really convenient that you guys were in the same state. Did you know of each other very well before linking up on Chango?
No, not at all. Actually, when he messaged me, that was the first time I had ever talked to him. And we didn't actually meet in person until probably about a year after we wrote that first song. So it was right around the time that we wrote Over the Edge was when we actually met up for the first time in person and worked together in the same room. So that was fun.
Wow, that's like super incredible that you got so much done remotely. So what is your process with Matt look like, just from like a remote writing standpoint? Like how many, like do you send files back and forth and write over top each other, or what does that look like?
Well, ever since the first time like we met up, we've done a lot more in person, just because we like being in the same room because it's easier to bounce ideas back and forth quicker and just get to the final product, like the final vision that we have. But we did do a lot of sending back and forth for this EP. For the cycle, for instance, that started kind of the way we used to write music, which is like he kind of wrote the structure for the song, the guitars, the bass, and drums. Sent it over to me. I did a lot of post-pro on it, wrote vocals, then we took it to Andrew Wade, and he helped us kind of sculpt it into what it is now.
Okay, so before Wake Up Hate came to be, what other acts were you playing with?
I specifically, I haven't actually played with an act that has really done anything significant. I've been in and out of bands since I was 14, and I've played shows here and there, but we never really did anything serious. I was in a band at one point, and I don't even know if it's still on iTunes or any streaming services. It was called Waverly Park. And I was the vocalist in that. That was when I was 16. That was a like Christian punk band. But other than that, I've been trying to start a band for a long time. It's been like just a hell of a process trying to find people and trying to like find the right people to write with and like mesh with and get it done. So Wake Up Hate is the first thing that actually has felt right and like worked out for me. Tristan, our drummer, played in a band called Actions Speak Louder. And Matt played in a band called Exotype, and I don't know if he played in anything else before that. But that's where we came from before Wake Up Hate.
Right on. And then when you were in your past attempts to form projects and in the actual creation of this project, what were some of the things that you looked for when trying to flesh out potential members? Like, what's kind of like character traits? What'd you look for in the people you wanted to work with?
Mostly, it was just wanting to write the same music. That was a big part. A lot of people that I would want to work with, or that I tried to work with rather, would always like want to copy basically like exactly like what another band sounds like, or they're always like chasing a specific genre that I just wasn't really a fan of. Like there was a lot of people that wanted to do like pop punk and stuff like that, which I like pop punk, but I'm not really a fan of like singing it or playing it or anything like that. And other than that, just people that are willing to like take it seriously. Like, there's a lot of people out there that say they want to be in a band, but then as soon as it comes to like paying for something or taking something like seriously, going to a producer, anything that requires money or effort, that's when people start kind of showing their true colors. And that's what, weeded a lot of people out.
So someone who's like hardworking, committed, and really likes the same sort of sound. So let's talk about the sound then. What would you describe your genre as?
I mean, I've been describing it as alternative rock because that's kind of what it's influenced by, I guess. Me personally, I'm influenced by a lot of like earlier 2000s bands. A lot of them are still around, but they were bigger, like around, for example, like 3 Days Grace. I'm actually a really big fan of Nickelback, Breaking Benjamin. I like Sick Puppies a lot. That's kind of like what I grew up on, like when I was learning how to like write music and stuff. So that's kind of like what comes naturally to me. And I also have like kind of, I really do like heavy music too. So, and that kind of started a little bit more recently, probably about like 4-5 years ago. I just like really got into heavier music, and Matt kind of comes from more of that background. So I think those two influences together, kind of the heavier side from Matt and the alternative side for me, is kind of what makes Wake Up Hate what it is.
So of the singles that are released so far, which one's your favorite?
My personal favorite, probably the one that we just released, Love Me Like a Hurricane.
And why is that one your favorite?
I think it shows how versatile we can be. I think it has the most dynamics of any song that we've released so far. And it also, I think our music kind of like pushes into that kind of pop realm a lot. And I think that song is one that does that really the most. Well, not the most on our record, but one of the ones that does. It's one of the songs on our record that has like the most pop influence. And I really kind of dig that. I think it makes it really unique.
What is the song about?
It's about a relationship, or maybe lack thereof, depending on how it's interpreted. But it's kind of a metaphor about how being without love can kind of be like you're going through a drought, and you're looking for water and you can't find it, and you're praying for rain. Basically, the hook is "Baby, love me like a hurricane." So yeah, it's kind of a metaphor that plays off of like looking for water and looking for love, that kind of thing.
When you're sitting down to write a new song, do you sit down and write the lyrics first and then construct the instrumental around it, or do you write over instrumentals?
Most of the time, the instrumental comes first. There have been times where I've come up with like an idea for a chorus first, but it always ends up being we write an instrumental and then I'll try that idea that I came up with over that instrumental, and it ends up just kind of fitting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so mostly it's the instrumental first. We like to get a vibe, like just the overall vibe we're trying to create, and then write vocals that complement that.
So when you have an instrumental that's sort of fleshed out to the point where you feel like you can start putting vocals over top of it, how do you go about writing your vocals? Like, what sort of inspires you? Where do you get your inspiration from?
As far as the process, there's been like a few different ways that we've done it. Like we've worked together like in the same room when we're writing vocals, and normally when we do that, we'll take like a MIDI instrument or something, and we'll all just kind of try to find a melody that we all like, and then from there we'll try to find some kind of phrase that we like that maybe is going to be a hook in the song or something, and from there we kind of decide on like the vibe of the song and what it's going to be about, and we kind of like all collectively work and figure out lyrics from there. And a lot of the time we do that with Andrew Wade. He's been a really, really big help when it comes to like just lyrics and overall vocal production. And there's also been a lot of the times where I'll write most of the lyrics and like kind of like the initial vocal ideas myself, and then we'll kind of get together collectively after that, and we'll sculpt the song from there.
Oh, so in those instances, that would be more of like a lyrics first, then instrumental.
No, the instrumental would get written way before this.
Oh, okay, all right. So you would sit down. Oh, okay. So like it'd be like a group rework of the lyrics that were already sort of layered over the instrumental kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I got you. That makes sense. So do you guys like do you try to conquer the chorus first, or do you work with the verses? Like, where do you start?
I normally always start with the chorus, just because I kind of need to know where the song's going, to really know how I even want to deliver the verses. So yeah, we've pretty much started with the chorus every single time. We like really, really big choruses too. So it's definitely a focus point when we start writing.
So with working with Andrew, so have you gone to him? Pretty much all the tracks so far has been with Andrew Wade, right?
Yes.
I know you're a vocalist, but I've got to ask because this is, at the end of the day, a drum channel. So how does the drum production handled with Andrew? Because I know he's phenomenal at live off the floor. Have you guys hired a session drummer, or has it been all MIDI?
So far it's been all MIDI. So basically, like, the way our process has been, once the songs are written and everything, is me and Matt will go through and program the drums, and Tristan's involved now too. It was me and Matt in the beginning when we were getting most of these songs done. But we will program the drums and get them like humanized and like basically sounding the way we want them to sound. And then I'll do the mix, and then we will send Andrew Wade kind of like the already mixed stems. So like we'll send him drums specifically, and just like different like files for the drums that he wants, and we'll send him a drumless mix most of the time, and sometimes like other things if he wants them, and then he'll master that. And
Okay.
So the drums kind of get like an extra boost, and like a few other things, whatever else he does, he works his magic, and it always sounds awesome. So
Hell yeah, he's the man when it comes to everything.
yeah, and we've had him completely mix two of our songs too, "Love Me Like a Hurricane" and "Over the Edge," and those turned out really awesome too.
Oh yeah, I loved Over the Edge. That was a really great track. I haven't jammed the newest one, the newest single, but Over the Edge was sweet. You guys I find that you have a ton of influences. Like in some songs, I hear a lot of active rock, and then in others, more like Asking Alexandria sort of metalcore, and then like Bring Me the Horizon in some places in your verses. It's really cool how diverse each song is, and it really keeps you on your toes. But then at the same time, I find that all the elements fit really well, which is really just, I guess, an example of really great writing.
Yeah, well, thank you for one. But yeah, we definitely have a lot of influences. We listen to a lot of music. Like one of my vocal influences is Architects. Just their choruses. I was talking earlier about how we really like big choruses. They're one of the bands that we really look up to in that regard. They always have like really killer choruses that they sound super wide, they slam, they're super like emotional and impactful. And that's something that we've been trying to incorporate in our music too. A little bit more mainstream, less metal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I can definitely, that's actually funny because I have that written down as a note to talk to you about, because you do have sing screaming through some of these tracks, but you have it in a way that is kind of reminiscent of an Architect sound, but the instrumental is very rock, which is super cool. Let's talk about your vocal training. How did you learn to sing the different styles that you sing? Are you traditionally trained, or did you just practice on your own kind of thing?
I don't really have any training at all. I was in chorus when I was in high school, but that's as close as I've ever come to taking a vocal lesson or anything like that. It's something I've always wanted to do, but I just never have for whatever reason. So as far as how I'm able to do it, it's a lot of just trial and error, honestly. Just screaming at the top of my lungs in my room since I was 16. Just trying to figure out what sounds cool, how to do it without hurting my voice, looking up tons of YouTube videos. That's been a huge help. I couldn't really name any specific ones just because I've watched so many, and just tried to pull everything that I can from all of them. And sometimes it's helped, but I think the biggest thing has just been doing it over and over and over, and recording myself has been a really big help too, because just hearing myself back, especially when I got into vocal tuning and production, and being able to hear what I sound like and hear it back, what it would sound like if it was finished, that was a really big game changer, and helped me figure out what I needed to focus on.
Yeah, that's super cool because I've come from the same sort of background where like once I started doing my covers, I even have videos on it where like I talked about recording myself really made like a massive difference in my playing and getting myself to the point where I could step into professional situations and like be comfortable. So that's cool to hear. All right, so yeah, man, let's talk about like what's next. So you mentioned you've got a release coming up, or a couple. What's the timeline that we're looking at to get some new music here?
Well, yeah, we just released our 4th single, and every single we released so far is going to be on our upcoming EP, which I don't have a date for yet, and I'm not going to say the name of yet because I'm pretty sure we're going to make an official announcement about it pretty soon. As far as timeline, within the next month or so, I would say.
And then what's the plans for like that EP? Are you going to use that EP to shop? Like what are you guys looking to do after that?
Well, when me and Matt started the band, we talked about like goals, basically like the why behind we were starting a band. Like what was our goal? Where did we see ourselves? And one thing that we decided is we didn't want to be signed at first. We do want to release the first EP independent, and we kind of like, I don't want to just say like we just want to see what happens, because there's a lot more going on behind the scenes, and we are working really hard. But we do want to stay independent, at least for the first release. And if we do get contacted by somebody, then we might take that into consideration. But as of right now, we're not looking to get signed or anything like that. We want to stay independent. We want to build. We want to write music. We don't want to take very long with writing new music after we drop this EP. We want to get right back to it.
So let's talk about like your roots. What was like your local scene like as a kid?
Well, I can't really tell you if I was involved in it or not as a kid. I thought I was, and maybe I was, I guess, to a degree. But it was back in like the MySpace days, man. So things were so different. At least for me, they were. So there wasn't like all this, like, there wasn't like this huge social media presence back then. Like we, like basically like when I was in a band as a kid, like we created a MySpace page, and that was kind of like our whole that was like basically like our website, like everything, you know? And then we would just play shows, and we like were super unorganized about it. I never had any merch or anything like that. We never actually got to record in a studio or anything like that. I knew nothing about recording myself. We practiced every week in a really shitty garage. And that was it. Like I was friends with a bunch of bands that did the same thing. Some of those bands are still doing that, I think. Yeah. That's basically kind of like what it was like for me as a kid, at least.
So growing up, was it always sort of in your plans to be performer, producer, ghostwriter? Was it always like that was the goal, or was this something that sort of happened because, you know, you kind of fell into it?
Yeah, growing up, I always wanted to be a performer. I always wanted to be like a rock star, you know. So that's always been a dream since I remember, like when I was 14, like I got a live DVD of Nickelback, and I think I got one of like 3 Days Grace too. And I remember watching them, and they basically changed my life, and I realized like that's what I wanted to do. That's always been like that. As far as producing and songwriting, obviously I wanted to write songs, but like ghostwriting and writing for other people and all of that, there was never any like intention on that happening. I never like wanted to be a producer or anything. The way I actually fell into that was I was working at a music store once upon a time, and I ended up getting some free recording software from one of the dealers that we sold for, and I used it to record myself. And really all I wanted was like just demos that I could listen to. one, like, you know, kind of how I talked about like hearing myself recorded, that was really all it was. Like I just wanted to hear the songs. I just wanted to be able to jam them in the car and stuff like that. Even if they were shitty, I didn't give a fuck. But that slowly turned into me trying to learn how to do more. And the reason I was learning how to do more was because I would go to show my friends these songs and they would be like, wow, this sounds like shit, or, you know, like whatever, like they, you know, because they did, like they sounded like shit. Like I was using, I don't even think I had a real drum sampler. I was just using like random bits and pieces of the drums that came with the recording software that I had, and just, you know, trying to make like bare minimum work. And so I got tired of hearing that it sounded like shit, and I joined what's called Nail the Mix. I'm sure you've heard of it. And just got really into that. And by around the time that I started actually getting decent at it was when I met Matt. And Matt's always been a pretty big fan and supporter of my mixes, which is really cool because he was one of the first people to tell me like, wow, this mix sounds sick. So it kind of boosted my confidence and it took off from there.
There's probably a lot of kids at home with a very similar story. They're just earlier on than where you're at from the standpoint of, you know, watching a live DVD. Like, it's funny you say that because my live DVD was Bullet in a Bible by Green Day. And I remember some of like the other ones that I watched, but that one really affected me. And so for anyone at home looking to do this professionally that wants to make that dream a reality, what would be some words of advice to help them take their first steps?
It's a tough question because I remember being like younger and trying really hard to like figure out like what it is that's gonna like help me stand out or help me like get to where I want to be. And looking back, I guess well, first of all, like perseverance, like never giving up, because like there's tons of times where I've just felt like it's not worth it and I should just give up. Like I'm never gonna be able to achieve anything. Like probably about 6 months before I met Matt and we started working together, there was a time where I was trying to learn how to mix better. I was like in Nail the Mix, you know, I was trying to do the production thing and I was just failing at it and I just hated it and I wanted to give up. And just, you know, go to some other producer and write songs with them and do something that way. But I didn't have money for that. And, you know, so I just kind of got really depressed and just like wanted to quit and didn't want to do it at all anymore. But, yeah, I'm really glad I stuck with it. And I think that's probably the biggest advice that I can give someone is just, if you want something and you know that you can achieve it, just do whatever it takes to do that, you know? And especially with like all the resources out there today, like you can learn how to do whatever you want basically by just looking it up on YouTube, you know? That's how I learned everything that I know about production and all of that. And one more thing that I will say that's really helped me stand out, at least I think it has, is whenever I work on anything, I give 100% on every single thing, and that's been everything, even back when I was first doing production work and working for free. And it's still today, like when I'm writing, like I've been writing demos for Wake Up Hate and sending them to Matt and Tristan to listen to. And when I send them to them, I don't send them to them until like I'm really happy with them, you know, and they are sounding as good as I can make them sound. Just because I think first impressions are everything, and it really affects the way people perceive you. So that, I think that's another really big thing, is giving like 100% and making everything that you show other people like the best thing that you've ever worked on.
Right on. Those are some really great words of wisdom. I want to back up real quick just because I think Nail the Mix would be an incredible asset for any young musician looking to get into the production side of things, can you just let my audience know, in case they don't know, what Nail the Mix is?
Sure, yeah. Nail the Mix was created by the producers Joey Sturgis, Joel Wanasek, and A.L. Levy. And basically what it is it's a subscription, and every month you get stems to a professionally produced song. They've had huge bands on there, like A Day to Remember, Bring Me the Horizon. I drawing a blank. They've had Jason Richardson on there. They've had Monuments on there. They've had Periphery on there. They've had like all sorts of huge bands, and you get stems to a new one every single month. They have a mix competition where you can actually mix the song yourself, and they have tons of tutorials on mixing and just tons of different programs to like help young producers and mixing engineers get started. And it's just basically like this endless pool of information. And also every month, a huge part of it is whatever band you get to watch that producer actually mix that song live. And that's huge, because just being able to watch producers like Andrew Wade, Taylor Larson was a huge one for me on Nail the Mix. Just getting to see some of their process and just what they're doing inside their DAW, and it's just really, really great. I'd highly recommend it to anybody who's trying to get good at production and mixing.
Yeah, especially for all the drummers in the audience, because Taylor Larson, pretty much my favorite drum mixes of all time. And then another one that really blew me away was watching Jason Lancaster work on the live version of Doomed. That was pretty incredible.
Oh yeah.
So I will include all those links in the description. You can check those out. Whatever. So let's get back to Wake Up Hate. So you come from MySpace background, which is sweet, and I guess like all my early scene bands I'd discovered on MySpace as well. After MySpace and after your first early projects, what were your biggest? You already mentioned a couple, but just take us through like your biggest influences from like a vocal standpoint. So who's like the artist that you really look up to when it comes to your vocal sound?
More than anything, it's gonna be 3 Days Grace, and it's specifically the Adam era. So like their first self-titled, and then 1X, and then I think there was a couple albums after that. 1X, that album, it's actually the first rock album that I ever got to listen to. So it's always had this huge influence on basically everything I do. So there's that, and Bring Me the Horizon is probably my more recent obsession, I think, and it's ever since That's the Spirit. I was kind of into them before, but I never really gave them a chance because like I said, I was never really into heavy music until more recently. But when they released That's the Spirit, I just remember being obsessed with the track Doomed, actually, is what really got me into them. And it's funny because I wasn't even into that track at first because I liked the writing. It was because I liked the mix on it. So, but that caused me to listen to it over and over and over, and I started really getting into this whole like pop vibe that they had going on, and it actually got me to listen to their earlier stuff too and fall in love with all of that. Like Sempiternal is one of my favorite albums of all time now too. And other than that, Architects, like I mentioned before, his vocals, specifically like his sing screams and the choruses, and I think those three are the best way to describe my influence as far as vocal writing and vocals go.
So what was it that drew you to, I guess I'll start with the first one, which was 3 Days Grace. What was it that really drew you to like the vocals off of 1X?
I think it was really a mixture of everything, because like I said, I had never really gotten to listen to rock music before that. because my mom, I love her to death, but she didn't really let me listen to rock music that much as a kid. So I just remember listening to that, and those were like, that was the first time I had ever heard just lyrics like that. Like the way they would write their lyrics, like they just, you could tell like they didn't care what people thought about it. It was just like a whole nother like world for me. So for 3 Days Grace, there's kind of like that magical, like nostalgic bit to it, but it's also just the lyrics. I was always like able to relate with them a lot, like always feeling like kind of like an outcast, or always feeling like I didn't fit in, especially in school. I was kind of picked on in school. I was never really the cool kid. So 3 Days Grace kind of gave me that outlet. And like, the guitars were cool. Like it had cool riffs. It was just a cool band,
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned like the parental restriction, because for me, I wanted to listen to Eminem and 50 Cent when I was a kid. Those were pretty big at the school that I was at. Everybody had, hip hop and rap. It was early 2000s at the time, and everybody was jamming that kind of stuff. And my parents didn't let me listen to rap, so I discovered 3 Days Grace. So I kind of went the opposite direction. I wasn't allowed rap music, and it drove me into metal. And I honestly don't think, like I've said in the past in certain interview cases, whatever, where I've said that like, I don't think if it wasn't for my parents restricting me and sort of forcing me down the rock route, I don't know if I'd be a drummer, and I don't know if I'd be as into metal as I am. So that's really cool to hear. Hell yeah, man. So having said all that, what does your mom think of like the band that you're currently in?
She loves the music. She does. She tells me all the time. She's super stoked whenever we release a new song. Of course, I show her some unreleased stuff every now and then whenever I go over and visit. But yeah, she's super supportive. But yeah, she's super into it. She's not super into rock, but she's super into us.
So what do you think? Is it because it's her little boy, or is it because she's really into the music? Like, do you think there was a change of heart there, or?
I think it's a mixture of both, because I've been in bands before and she hasn't been as into it, and probably for good reason, because it didn't sound, that great. Yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
All right, man. So if somebody's looking to, first of all, like hear what your writing sounds like outside of Wake Up Hate, and then hire you as a ghostwriter, how would they get in contact with you, and how would they check out your portfolio?
You can check out the portfolio by going to southhousestudios.com. And there's actually a songwriting tab where you can go through and like hear some of my more recent instrumentals that I've been writing. And we're currently in the process of rebooting South House, actually, because with Wake Up Hate, we've been super consumed in that, me and Matt have. So now that we've finally established Wake Up Hate as a band, we'll be rolling out like a lot more instrumentals and putting a lot more focus into South House, actually.
Okay, sweet. So you'll definitely be taking on some new clients then. Cool. And then how can people check out one of my new favorite bands, Wake Up Hate?
You can go to wakeuphatemusic.com, or you can go to @wakeuphatemusic on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook is facebook.com/wakeuphatemusic.
Amazing, man. All right. Thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. It was a blast.
There we go. So it's been another episode of Line Check. I really hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jake Adkins. In the description of this video, you can find links to all the things that we talked about, including all of his socials, his band's socials. I strongly recommend you go check out Wake Up Hate on their YouTube page. I'll include the links in the description below as well for all of that. You can find ways to connect with Jake and ways to connect with me, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can find all that in the description below as well. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to support the channel channel, there's two ways you can do that. You can become one of my patrons, where directly following this video, I will be in the community Discord server that's accessible by my patrons, doing a Q&A, hanging out with you guys, talking over voice. So if you want to get involved with that, if you want to pledge to the channel and support this this type of content so that I can continue to create it down the line, then you can check out the Patreon link in the description. And there's also a merch link. So if you want to grab a t-shirt, there's a link down there as well. Outside of all of that, yeah, thank you so much for watching this episode of Line Check, and I will see you all very soon with something new.